Guys, it's Karen and I thought I would come and do another Tretinoin update because it has now been 3 months, but I'm doing the update more because there are some things I need to tell you about it, some changes, and to answer, I suppose, some of the comments on the last video. So it's been 3 months that I've been using it on the flooding method, meaning around my eyebrows. And so the first thing I want to say is that I'm not using it on my eyelids. There was a lot of comments on the video last time saying you shouldn't use it on your eyelids, the skin of the eyelid is too sensitive, blah blah blah. And I think that's my fault for just miscommunicating, and I maybe said, you know, I maybe at some point said eyelids, I'm not sure, but I am putting it just underneath my brow here and just above my brow, so I'm very careful to literally just put a bit under there. Now it will hopefully travel to the middle part, to the crease, meaning that there'll be some effect there, but I'm certainly not putting it on my eyelids, and I can feel where it's traveling to, and it doesn't, there's no dryness and no stinging on my actual lid above my eye. So I'm not putting it on my eyelid, and it isn't traveling to my eyelid. So just to clarify that. Another very popular comment is that Tretinoin is something that takes a long time to work. You won't see results in a month or two, you know, you need to wait 6 months to a year. And there's quite a few comments like that. So I've two things to say on that. Number one, I have already been using Tretinoin for a year, not specifically around my eyes, but I've been using it. You know, I did a Tretinoin 8-month update. If you have a look back in June, I did my 8-month update, and I was using it all over my face for 8 months, you know, right up to and around my eyes. I can't even remember if I was putting it underneath my eyebrow. I think I was, but I started off on a very low level. I started off on 0.025, then moved up to 0.50, and there were a few changes during that 8-month period. Before that, I used retinol, and I also used differin. So I have been using retinoids in some form for quite some years. So I think what may have happened is people that are watching those flooding, these flooding updates and eye area, hooded eye videos are assuming that I've just started, that this is my initial plan, and it isn't at all. This is part way through my journey with Tretinoin, with retinoids, with retinols, etc. And this is me just upping the dose, really. I'm just increasing it to 0.1% and focusing on my eye and sort of forehead area. I am actually putting it in the middle of my forehead here as well, because, you know, this above here and here will help. If there is any lifting at all, then that's where to put it. But the other thing to say, again, I think people maybe haven't watched the initial video on the study on flooding, and the point of it is that you are all absolutely right. Tretinoin, retinol, any kind of retinoid or any kind of vitamin A takes time to work, and that's been proven by studies that, you know, one way of doing it, one way of doing it is to start at a low level and to increase until your skin becomes accustomed, and then to eventually, you know, be using a higher dose a couple of times a week, or some people can tolerate it every other night, etc., etc. And using it that way, it will take up to a year to see any results. But you can't use a blanket statement of it takes a year to see results, it takes 6 months to see results, because everybody is using a different strength. And so that doesn't really make sense to say that Tretinoin takes a year to see results. It's all about the strength of something that you use and how often. You know, somebody using a 0.1% Tretinoin every day is of course going to see results much quicker than somebody using a 0.05% once a week or twice a week. And so it's just food for thought there, that I am aware that the general protocol with Tretinoin is that you use it at a lower dose, work your way up, and it takes a long time. But the point of this is that I had read about a study. I've linked it in that first video that I did on the flooding method, and they don't call it the flooding method, but they show that you can get quicker results by using a higher dose, by using it much more often, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Another comment was that I may not be seeing results, or that it may look worse because my eyelids are dry and that I've got to get over the dryness period. And again, I would say that, you know, I've been using it for a long time, and I have said in my updates that actually my eyes weren't very dry at all, that there was tiny little bits of flaking, but very minimal. There was a lot less than I expected, and I find in general I do react better to tretinoin than retinol. If I use retinol, I get much drier, flakier skin and more irritation in general. So I did say that my eyes are not that dry, but that doesn't mean that they are not dehydrated and that, you know, more moisture, etc., will make them look plumper. And so I am, of course, paying more attention to putting more, making sure that I'm really keeping that area hydrated. And so what I did is I ordered the Nars NEC, the Neck Elasticity Catalyst. As some of you may be aware, I love that. I have used it before, but it's a very expensive item. But it's something that you use on your neck, but it's also, I think it was actually Brandon that said you can use it on your eyelids. And so I've been using that on top of, you know, sort of all over my eyelid after the tretinoin. So no more than what I already do in my routine, which is kind of use different things to make sure the skin is hydrated. And if you watch my most recent skincare routine, nothing's really changed from that routine. There may be different products, but the routine is still the same. So in the morning I use a vitamin C and then an SPF, and okay, it might be a different vitamin C, but I'm still using a vitamin C and an SPF. And then in the evening I'll use an oil sometimes, or sometimes a B5 cream, or sometimes the Egyptian Magic. You know, I feel like using different products is good for the skin. I think that it means that something will work. You know, I've talked about that kind of theory that I have anyway, using various different forms of one type of ingredient. So like using different retinols, using different moisturizers, using different hydrators, that kind of thing. Okay, that's all the comments to answer. I've got two big things to tell you that have changed here, and also how is it going at the 3-month stage. Regarding photos, I'm going to put in a photo, or maybe put it in as I'm talking now, of what it was like before I started the flooding method and what it's like now at the 3-month stage. I'm not going to tell you whether I think there's any difference this time, because what I was really interested to note in the last update at the 2-month stage was that a lot of you agreed with me that you thought it looked worse, because like I said, I can see that my skin sort of sits on my eyelashes, I can feel that. But there's also a lot of people that said they thought it looked slightly better and that my skin looked a different texture. So I thought on this update I will just put the photos in and show you, and you can make your own mind up as to whether you think it looks better or worse. Big change that I have to tell you about is that I bought this, and this is the Obagi Tretinoin cream, 0.1%, and it was a comment that was left that said, why don't you invest in the Obagi Tretinoin? And that was the comment. It was a simple comment, but I think that was a really good comment, because it was the fact that she said, why don't you invest? And I thought that's so true. If I'm about to spend so much money on having surgery on my eyes, then I should invest in what I know then to be a true tretinoin. Not that I don't believe Retirides was a true tretinoin, but the problem with Retirides is that it comes from abroad for me anyway, and so I don't, you know, I know that it would take a long time to travel. I don't know the conditions that it would travel in, and I don't know anything about the company, whereas Obagi are a trusted skincare company, and this, you know, they go through a lot more procedures to give you this, because that is the regulations in the UK. So I used the website Skin Station and just filled in a form requesting this, paying for it. It was £100 in total, so a very expensive cream. In fact, I'm going to put it back in the box. You can see the tube there, because I've got all these lights and whatnot. I don't want it to heat up. And I then got a phone call a couple of days after I put the order in, and the lady was just going over my form and, you know, conditions and what I was using it for, and she was concerned because it was 0.1%. Was I already accustomed to a lower percentage? Had I used a lower percentage, which of course I have. And so at the end of that, she agreed to prescribe it to me, and it was sent out, and I think I got it in less than a week. So I have been using this for about the past week, and I was really curious to see what are the differences between this and Retirides. So the first thing I can tell you is that I feel like I need less cream using this. I need to use less. It feels more emollient than the Retirides one, and I haven't specifically compared ingredients. I'm going off the way that it feels, but it feels more emollient. I have to use the tiniest amount. I just put the tiniest amount on my little finger, put it under and above my eyebrow, under and above my eyebrow, and then the excess is just rubbed sort of in the middle here. So that was the first thing I noticed. The second thing I've noticed is that I had almost immediate peeling. So the day after using this, I noticed that I had some tiny bits of peeling skin, and then a little bit more the following day. And that's unusual because if you think about it, I've been using 0.1% continuously anyway. So the day before using this, I had used my 0.1% Retirides. And so in theory, I shouldn't have got peeling as if I was just starting Tretinoin, because there was no peeling at the point I put this on. My skin was accustomed to Tretinoin, but it's interesting that using a different Tretinoin, it has started peeling. And it may simply be that it's a different product, but it doesn't necessarily make sense to me, but it's interesting. The other thing that I noticed is that as I'm using my different moisturisers and micellar waters, etc., that there is a slight stinging around this area when I'm using my cotton pad soaked in micellar water and going over my eyes, or using my eye makeup remover, whatever I'm using around this area is stinging slightly, and that did not happen with the Retirides. I didn't get any stinging. So I know that people are going to be asking, you know, does that mean that Retirides doesn't work and that we should get Obagi? I can't say that, because unless I was in a lab looking at the product, you know, and analysing the active tretinoin content, there's really no way of knowing. There's definitely some activity in the Retirides one, because, you know, I remember I used it all over my face, and I've used different tubes from them. I've repurchased from them, probably used about 4 tubes, because I used the 0.025, the 0.05, the 0.1%, and I repurchased that, and it made my face so scaly that I stopped using it. And so there's definitely some activity in it, but I feel comforted by the fact that, like I said, I'm getting a little bit of sting, and it feels like this may be working harder for me at the moment, but we'll see how things go. It's going to be interesting to see how things now work, because this has just been a week using this. And I have learnt that my skin takes a while to react to something. So I say that because the QRX retinol I thought was great. I'd been using it for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden I had hives on my skin, which may or may not be related to that. But I then used the inky retinol just on my face. Again, thought it was wonderful after a week, but then a little bit later my skin started to go really dry and scaly, and so it takes my skin a while to have a negative reaction. So we'll see what it's like when I do my next 4-month update. The final thing to update you on is I have a date for my blepharoplasty, so for the eye surgery, and it's a lot sooner than I had anticipated. So do you remember I said the consultant told me he didn't have any spaces until February? And I was, you know, disappointed in that at first, because obviously I was eager to get it done and it's a very exciting thing for me. But I accepted that I'd have to wait, and as I said to you guys, it meant I could continue using this and continue on with this experiment. Then I got a call from his secretary, and she said to me, I have a space on the 23rd of October. And I was like, this year? Because I, of course, wasn't expecting it to be this month, you know. And she said, yes. And I was like, oh no, there's no way I can do that. That's in a couple of weeks' time. You know, my husband needs to take time off work apart from anything. And I was just thinking, you know, I've told you guys that I'm going to continue on with this, so I need to do it a bit later than that. She offered me a date at the beginning of November, the middle of November, the end of November, and I kept saying to her, oh no, later than that, later than that, later than that. And she said, we can't actually start booking into next year yet. She said, but I can give you a date in December. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to go for December, because that feels like a sort of compromise in that October, the update I'm doing today is 3 months, November will be 4 months, and December will be 5 months. And I think that 5 months is a good enough time to see if there's any difference with my hooding, because in general you should see a difference in between 6 months to a year from Tretinoin, but with this flooding method I should really have seen a difference by now, but certainly at the 5 month stage. But the other thing is that I am going to continue to use this. I'm not going to stop using Tretinoin. And actually that was another comment. A lot of people seem to be concerned that I was going to continue to use this right up until the surgery. And I am going to ask again, just to clarify, but I did already discuss it with him, and he said there was, as long as my skin was accustomed to it and it wasn't the case of I just suddenly started using a 0.1%, then there really isn't that big a deal. And I think actually the fact that I've been using it for so many years, that may be why it's okay, because Tretinoin can thin the skin, but then long term it actually thickens it, so there's some ambiguity there. So I will double check on that and whether I need to stop, you know, any acids or anything like that. But what I realised was that the surgery I'm having, the blepharoplasty, so it's on the 4th of December, I can't remember if I just told you that or not. The surgery will take away excess skin, so it will take away loose skin and excess skin, but it won't do anything for any of the skin on my eyelids. It won't change the texture of my eyelid skin at all. And I can see, even where there is no wrinkles on my eyes, that the texture is crepey. And so that's something that Tretinoin is likely to address, and the surgery won't. And so I'm definitely going to continue using this and still, you know, do the before and after pictures. It will be a bit tricky in the whole blepharoplasty period, because I'll be doing a video on that, of course. I'll be doing a video diary and showing you before and after. But I will be able to see if this makes any difference to the texture of my eyelids in general. And I thought about that because somebody pointed it out. You know, somebody said, although the excess skin is worse, that the texture of my skin looked better, and I thought I didn't even really look at that, and that is a really good point. That's everything I have to update you on today. I'm really interested to see what you guys think of the before and after, because like I said last time, there was a lot of people that agreed with me, but then there was also a lot of comments saying that they thought my eyes looked better. So I thought this time I'm not going to influence it whatsoever, and I'll just see what you guys think from the photos alone, and I suppose from me in general being on video. So my makeup today is number 7, the number 7 foundation. I've got on Nars blush in Sin. On my eyes is the MAC pigment in Tan, and on my lips is the Too Faced liquid lipstick in Sugar Cookie. These earrings are from Topshop. Necklace is from River Islands, I think. Yeah, and that's everything. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you again.